There is a photograph that hangs in the memory of every Lakers fan who lived through the 1980s. Magic Johnson, a rookie, jumping center against the Philadelphia 76ers because the greatest scorer in the history of the sport could not walk onto the floor. 42 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists, a performance so legendary that they still show it on television every single June when the finals come around. But there is another number from that same night. A number that almost nobody remembers. 37 points, 10 rebounds, 42 minutes played. And it belonged to a man so quiet, so smooth, so completely unbothered by the spotlight that the biggest game of his life became a footnote to somebody else's. The greatest player in Lakers history knew exactly what that man was worth. He said that without him, there was no dynasty, no banners, no Showtime. Nobody listened. In this video, we tell the story of the player Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, called the most underrated man he ever shared a floor with. The one whose greatness was so effortless that people mistook it for nothing at all, and by the end, you will understand why the man they called Silk was the most important forgotten player in the history of the Los Angeles Lakers. Kareem was right about Jamaal Wilkes, and it took the rest of the world years to catch up. But before we get to the vindication, you need to understand where this man came from. He was born Jackson Keith Wilkes on May 2, 1953, in Berkeley, California. His father was a Baptist minister, and young Keith grew up in a household where discipline, humility, and doing things the right way were not suggestions. They were the foundation of everything. He was one of 5 children, and the values that would define his entire career, the quiet professionalism, the refusal to seek attention, the belief that the work speaks louder than the mouth, all of it came from that home in California. He grew up in Ventura, then moved to Santa Barbara, and by the time he reached Santa Barbara High School, it was obvious he was different. Not louder than everyone else, not flashier, just better in a way that was hard to describe. He was tall and thin, almost impossibly thin, and he played with a kind of grace that made the whole thing look easy. He earned All-America honors and the title of California Mr. Basketball in 1969, and every major college program in the country came calling. But there was only one place that made sense. In the early 1970s, there was no bigger name in all of sports than UCLA basketball, and no bigger name in coaching than John Wooden. The Bruins were not just winning. They were dominating in a way that had never been done before and has never been done since. And Wooden, the Wizard of Westwood, was famously particular about the players he brought into his program. He wanted more than talent. He wanted character. He wanted young men who understood that the team came before the individual, always. Keith Wilkes was exactly what Wooden was looking for. He joined the varsity for the 1971 to 1972 season, and he stepped into a UCLA team that was already in the middle of the most incredible run of success in the history of college basketball. At the center of it all was Bill Walton, the red-headed giant who would become one of the greatest college players ever. And playing alongside him, doing all the things that did not show up on the highlight reels, was the skinny forward from Santa Barbara. That first season, the Bruins went undefeated and won the national championship, beating Florida State in the title game. Wilkes was named to the NCAA All-Tournament team. The next season, they did it again. Another undefeated run. Another national championship, this time demolishing Memphis State in the final. 2 years at UCLA. 2 national titles, and he was a central part of the most staggering streak the sport has ever seen. The 88 consecutive victories that UCLA strung together during that era, a record that will almost certainly never be broken. He earned consensus All-American honors twice. He was one of the most decorated players ever to come out of the greatest program in the country. And already the pattern that would follow him his entire life was taking shape. He won everywhere he went. But somehow he was never the story. Walton was the story. The streak was the story. Wooden was the story. Wilkes was just the guy who made everything work, quietly, in the background, night after night. Wooden understood exactly what he had. Years later, long after both men had left the game, the legendary coach was asked to describe his ideal player. What would that player look like? What qualities would he have? And Wooden did not describe a fantasy. He did not list traits. He simply said that you would want a player who was a good student, polite and courteous, an unselfish team player, a strong defender and rebounder, effective both inside and out. And then he said the line that tells you everything. He said, "Why not just take Jamaal Wilkes and let it go at that?" Think about that for a moment. John Wooden, the greatest coach in the history of college basketball, a man who coached dozens of All-Americans and future professionals and legends of the game, was asked to describe the perfect player. And his answer was to name one specific human being. Not a composite, not an ideal, a real person. Jamaal Wilkes. This is a coach who had Lou Alcindor, the young Kareem himself, at UCLA. This is a coach who had Bill Walton, one of the most gifted big men ever to play. This is a man who won 10 national championships and could have described his ideal player as any combination of the extraordinary talents he had personally molded. And when the question was put to him, the name that came out of his mouth was the thin, quiet forward from Santa Barbara. That is the kind of respect Wilkes commanded from the people who truly knew basketball. It was total. It was the highest praise available. And it existed in a completely separate universe from the way the general public thought about him, which is to say, they mostly did not think about him at all. The people who understood basketball at the deepest level always knew what Wilkes was. That was never the problem. The problem was everyone else. In 1974, the Golden State Warriors selected him with the 11th overall pick in the NBA draft. It is worth pausing on that number for a second. 11th, his UCLA teammate Bill Walton went first overall to Portland. And that is fitting because it captures the exact dynamic that would define the rest of his career. Wilkes was always the other guy, the complementary piece. Valuable, respected, but never the prize. Around this time, having converted to Islam, he changed his name to Jamaal Abdul-Latif, though he continued to play under Wilkes for the sake of public recognition. He arrived in the professional ranks carrying the same reputation he had at every level: smooth, efficient, a winner who did not need the ball to dominate the game. And what happened next should have made him a household name. The Warriors were led by Rick Barry, one of the most gifted and most difficult scorers of his generation, a man who put up over 30 points a game and demanded the ball. Coach Al Attles built a team-oriented system that leaned on as many as 10 different players in a given night. And into that system stepped a rookie who understood, better than almost anyone in the league, how to fit. Wilkes contributed just over 14 points and 8 rebounds a game. He did whatever the team required. He defended, he rebounded, he knocked down that impossible jump shot from the corner, and he never, ever complained about being the second option. That rookie season, the Golden State Warriors won the NBA championship. It was the franchise's first title since it had been in Philadelphia back in 1956. And the rookie forward from UCLA was a central reason why. He was named the 1975 NBA Rookie of the Year, an award he won over none other than Bill Walton, the same teammate who had been taken 10 spots ahead of him in the draft. He was named to the All-Rookie First Team and the All-Defensive Second Team in the same season, a national champion in college, a Rookie of the Year, an NBA champion, all before his 22nd birthday. And still, somehow, the wider basketball world barely registered his name. Part of that was the era. Part of it was the fact that he played next to a scorer like Barry, who soaked up the attention the way Walton had at UCLA. But part of it was simply who Wilkes was. He had this strange, unteachable jump shot, a two-handed release that he brought up from behind his head, a motion so unorthodox that no coach would ever have taught it. But it went in. It went in constantly, especially from the corners. It was smooth and quiet and deadly, and it perfectly matched the man who shot it. He spent 3 seasons in Golden State, making his first All-Star team along the way. And then, in 1977, he made the decision that would define the rest of his life. He signed as a free agent with the Los Angeles Lakers. And that is where the real story begins. Because in Los Angeles, Jamaal Wilkes was about to meet the one man who would understand his value more completely than anyone else ever had. A man who was, at that very moment, the loneliest superstar in professional basketball. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had come to the Lakers in 1975, traded from Milwaukee, already the most unstoppable offensive force the game had ever seen. The skyhook, the unblockable, unstoppable, geometrically perfect shot that no defender in history ever solved. He had already won a championship and multiple MVP awards. He was a giant in every sense of the word. But in those first years in Los Angeles, before Magic, before the dynasty, Kareem was carrying a mediocre team on his back. The organization had promising young pieces. It had talent, but it wallowed in the middle of the pack, unable to break through. And Kareem, a serious, cerebral, deeply private man, was searching for something he could rely on. Not another star to compete with him, not another ego. He needed someone who could produce without needing to be told he mattered. Someone who could carry a scoring load and defend and disappear into the team without disappearing on the floor. He needed Jamaal Wilkes, and when Wilkes arrived, Kareem knew immediately what he had. The two men could not have been more different in size. Kareem was 7'2", the tallest and most imposing presence in the sport. Wilkes was listed at 6'6" and 190 pounds, and that might have been generous. He was reed thin, all limbs and angles, and observers looked at that frame and assumed he would be swallowed alive by the bigger, stronger forwards who dominated the professional game. Scouts questioned whether that body could survive a full season of professional punishment, let alone a career. They were wrong, because Wilkes was strong in the ways that did not show. He was durable beyond belief. In a 5-year stretch beginning with the 1978 to 1979 season, he missed only 3 out of more than 400 games. 3. He led the Lakers in minutes played. His slender build, the thing everyone thought was a weakness, turned out to be a weapon because it let him slip past bigger opponents before they even knew he was moving. And that jump shot. That impossible, beautiful, unteachable jump shot. The great Lakers announcer, Chick Hearn, watched it drop from the corner so reliably, night after night, that he stopped calling it a jump shot at all. He called it the 20-foot layup. And it was Hearn who gave him the nickname that would follow him forever, Silk. Because that is how he played, smooth as silk, effortless, so graceful that the greatness slipped right past you if you were not paying close attention. The problem was that most people were not paying close attention. But Kareem was. In the 1979 to 1980 season, everything changed for the Lakers, and it changed because a 19-year-old named Earvin Johnson arrived from Michigan State with a smile that could light up an arena and a passing ability the league had never seen. Magic transformed the Lakers overnight. He turned a good team into a spectacle. The fast break became an art form. The Forum became the place to be. Hollywood showed up, and Showtime was born. And here is the part that history has flattened into a simple story. The story we all remember is Magic and Kareem. 2 names, a perfect duo, the point guard and the center. But that is not how it actually worked in those early championship years, because standing right there between the two of them, doing more scoring than almost anyone remembers, was Jamaal Wilkes. In that first championship season of 1979 to 1980, Wilkes averaged 20 points a game. 20. He was the second leading scorer on a championship team behind Kareem himself. He was not a role player. He was not a complementary piece who filled in the gaps. He was one of the primary offensive weapons on one of the best teams in the sport. And the following season, he pushed his scoring average even higher, up to over 22 points a game, and made another all-star team. Kareem saw all of it. He was the one throwing the game open. When defenses collapsed on that skyhook, when they sent 2 and 3 men to try to stop the unstoppable, it was Wilkes who made them pay. He would slip to the corner or slash to the wing, and that 20-foot layup would drop through the net, and the defense would have to choose all over again. Do we stop Kareem or do we stop Silk? And there was no right answer. That was the whole point. That was why it worked. Kareem understood something that the box scores and the highlight reels never captured. He understood that his own dominance was only as valuable as the players who could punish teams for respecting it. A great scorer who draws a double team is only great if someone else makes the open shot. And nobody in the league made that open shot more reliably, more quietly, more automatically than Jamaal Wilkes. He was the release valve. He was the answer to the unanswerable question that Kareem's presence created every single possession. And so Kareem, who was famously reserved, famously hard to impress, famously unwilling to hand out praise he did not mean, told anyone who asked that Wilkes was the most underrated player he had ever played with. He meant it as the highest compliment he had. And he meant it as a warning. He was telling the world that it was missing something, that it was watching one of the greats and mistaking him for background scenery. Nobody listened. Which brings us to the single game that captures this entire tragedy. The game that should have been the crowning moment of Jamaal Wilkes' career, and instead became the perfect symbol of how completely the world overlooked him. Game 6 of the 1980 NBA Finals. The Lakers led the Philadelphia 76ers 3-2. One win from the championship, and then disaster. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the engine of the entire team, the reigning MVP, had badly sprained his ankle in Game 5. He could not travel to Philadelphia. He could not play. The greatest scorer in the game was gone, at the worst possible moment in the most important game of the season. Everyone knows what happened next. Everyone knows the legend. Magic Johnson, the 19-year-old rookie, jumped center in place of Kareem and delivered one of the most iconic individual performances in the history of the sport. 42 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists, playing every position on the floor, winning the championship and the finals MVP in one unforgettable night. It is one of the greatest stories in basketball, and it deserves every bit of the reverence it receives. But here is what the legend leaves out. Magic Johnson did not win that game by himself, not even close, because on that same floor, on that same night, with the team's best player watching helplessly from Los Angeles, Jamaal Wilkes played the game of his life. 37 points, 10 rebounds, 42 minutes of relentless, brilliant championship basketball. He carried the scoring load the way he always did, only more so because now there was no Kareem to draw the defense away. He was the steadiest force on the floor in the biggest game imaginable, and he answered the moment completely, and almost nobody remembers. The story became magic, all of it. The rookie at center, the 42 points, the finals MVP, and Wilkes, who had scored nearly as many points, who had matched the moment with a performance for the ages, faded into the same background he had lived in his entire life. It was the perfect, painful summary of his career. He did something historic on the biggest stage, and it was immediately overshadowed by a teammate. Even Magic himself understood the injustice of it. To his credit, in the years that followed, Magic never let anyone tell the story of that game without crediting Wilkes. He brought it up constantly. He made a point of reminding people that Silk had gone for 37 that night, that he had not done it alone, that the forgotten man had been every bit as important as the legend. But the correction never took. The world had already decided what that game meant, and there was no room in the story for a quiet forward with an unteachable jump shot. Kareem, watching from his couch in Los Angeles, unable to be there, knew exactly what his teammate had done. He knew that Wilkes had held the whole thing together in his absence, and it only deepened his conviction about the man, because this was the truth Kareem had been trying to communicate all along. When it mattered most, when the pressure was at its absolute peak, when the biggest star was gone, it was Silk who stepped forward and delivered. That is not a role player. That is a great player who happened to be surrounded by legends. The championships kept coming. Wilkes won again in 1982, another vital contributor to another title. Through those early Showtime years, before James Worthy arrived, before the roster filled with future Hall of Famers, it was Wilkes who was the third pillar of the whole operation. Kareem in the post, Magic running the break, and Silk on the wing, punishing every defense that dared to focus on the other two. 3 championships in Los Angeles, a 4th ring overall, counting his rookie title in Golden State. 4 championships across 2 different franchises at every level of the game, going all the way back to those 2 national titles at UCLA. He was, by any honest measure, one of the greatest winners the sport has ever produced. And he was disappearing from the conversation in real time. By the mid-1980s, the Lakers were evolving. James Worthy, the #1 overall pick, was emerging as the small forward of the future. The team was getting younger, faster, deeper, and Wilkes, now in his 30s, was beginning to slow down. In 1985, the Lakers won another championship, one that finally exorcised the ghost of the Boston Celtics on Boston's own floor. Wilkes was a champion again, but an injury kept him out of the finals against the Celtics. He was there, he was part of it, and once again, when the biggest moments arrived, circumstance conspired to keep him out of the frame. He finished his career with a brief stint at the Los Angeles Clippers in 1985, and then he was done. 12 seasons, 4 championships, 3 All-Star appearances, a Rookie of the Year award, 2 All-Defensive teams, a career scoring average of nearly 18 points a game on tremendous efficiency, and a resume of winning that almost no player in the history of the sport can match. And then he vanished. Not from life. Wilkes went on to a successful career off the court, in finance and in business, a thoughtful and dignified man who had always been more than basketball. But from the basketball conversation, he simply disappeared. The nickname faded. The 20-foot layup became a memory that only the old Lakers fans still carried. New generations of fans watched the Showtime highlights and saw Magic and Kareem and later Worthy, and never even wondered about the third scorer, the smooth forward with the strange shot who had made it all possible in those first crucial years. There is a strange detail that captures how far he slipped from memory. For a long stretch, even in the age of the internet, his own encyclopedia page did not have a proper photograph of him. This was a Hall of Fame caliber player, a 4-time champion, and the world had so thoroughly forgotten what he looked like that there was barely an image to show. A giant portrait of him hung on the office wall of Tom Cruise's character in a hit Hollywood movie, and most people who saw it had no idea who the man in the picture was. But there was one place his greatness never faded, and that was in the memory of the men who played with him and against him. The people who actually understood basketball at its highest level never forgot Jamaal Wilkes for a single second, because they were the ones who had to try to stop him. They were the ones who saw up close how impossible he was to defend, how reliable he was in the biggest moments, how much easier he made life for the superstars around him. And chief among those men was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem is not a man who hands out compliments loosely. He is thoughtful, precise, sometimes prickly, and famously honest to a fault. He has spent his post-basketball life as a writer, a historian, a cultural critic, a man who chooses his words with tremendous care. When Kareem says something, he means it exactly. And for decades, whenever the subject of his old teammates came up, whenever anyone asked him about the players who made Showtime work, he returned again and again to the same name: Jamaal Wilkes, the most underrated teammate he ever had, the perfect complement to his own game, the man whose value the world had never fully understood. He was not being sentimental, he was being accurate. Kareem had spent his entire career being double and triple teamed, and he knew better than any human being alive what it meant to have a teammate who could make defenses pay for it. He knew that his own numbers, his own dominance, his own legend were all propped up by the players who could convert the openings his presence created. And he knew that Wilkes did that job better than almost anyone in the history of the game. The vindication, when it finally came slowly. It came the way it always does for players like Wilkes, not in the roar of the moment, but in the quiet reconsideration of history. In 2012, nearly 3 decades after he had last laced up his sneakers, Jamaal Wilkes was finally inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. It was long overdue, and everyone who understood the game knew it. And that same year, the Lakers finally raised his number 52 to the rafters, hanging it alongside the greatest names in the history of the franchise. When they did, the men who showed up to honor him told the whole story. Jerry West was there, James Worthy was there, Elgin Baylor was there, and so was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, standing in support of the teammate he had been trying to get the world to appreciate for 40 years. Wilkes, always composed, always dignified, choked up as he thanked the legends around him. He had finally received the fanfare that his career had so consistently denied him, and the man who had been telling the truth about him the whole time was standing right there to see it happen. In the years since, the reconsideration has only deepened. Modern basketball analysis has become obsessed with exactly the things Wilkes did best. Efficiency, two-way impact, the value of a player who can score without dominating the ball, who spaces the floor, who defend, who fits seamlessly next to superstars without demanding touches or attention. These are the most prized qualities in the sport today. And they describe Jamaal Wilkes perfectly. If he played now, in this era, with these tools of analysis, he would be understood instantly. He would be celebrated as the ideal modern forward, the perfect fit, the winning player. Kareem understood all of that before anyone had the language for it. He did not need advanced statistics to see what Wilkes was. He saw it with his own eyes, night after night, for 8 seasons. He saw a man who did everything right, who won everywhere he went, who delivered in the biggest moments, and who was somehow, impossibly, taken for granted by nearly everyone watching. That is the strange curse of a certain kind of greatness. When you are loud, when you are flashy, when you demand the spotlight, the world gives you credit even when you do not deserve it. But when you are smooth, when you make the difficult look effortless, when you disappear into the team while still doing the hardest things on the floor, the world convinces itself that you were not really doing much at all. Wilkes was so good at making it look easy that people mistook the ease for a lack of difficulty. They saw the silk and never noticed the strength underneath it. Consider what he actually accomplished, laid out plainly. A high school champion, a 2-time national champion at UCLA, part of the greatest winning streak in college basketball history, personally endorsed by John Wooden as the ideal basketball player. A Rookie of the Year who won a championship in his first professional season, beating out his more famous teammate for the award. 4 NBA championships across 2 franchises. 3 All-Star appearances, a pair of all-defensive selections. A 37-point masterpiece in a title-clinching finals game. And a reputation among his own peers, the men who actually knew, as one of the most complete and reliable forwards of his entire era. That is not the resume of a role player. That is the resume of a great one, and the only reason it was ever in doubt is that he had the misfortune, if you can call it that, of always standing next to someone the cameras liked better. Walton at UCLA, Barry in Golden State, Magic and Kareem in Los Angeles. Everywhere he went, there was a bigger name to absorb the attention, and Wilkes let them have it, because he had been raised to believe that winning mattered more than credit. Kareem knew the price his teammate paid for that humility. And he spent 40 years trying to make sure the debt got settled. He kept saying it, the most underrated player he ever played with. Not one of the most underrated. The most. Coming from a man who played alongside Oscar Robertson, alongside Magic Johnson, alongside James Worthy, alongside dozens of the greatest players who ever lived. That is not a small statement. That is one of the greatest basketball minds in history pointing at a specific man and saying, "You are all missing it, you are all wrong. This one was special and you never saw it." He was right. He was right about the jump shot that could not be taught but could not be stopped. He was right about the durability hidden inside that fragile-looking frame. He was right about the way Wilkes made the entire offense function by punishing every defense that focused on the stars. He was right about the 37 points in Game 6 mattering just as much as the 42. He was right that the quiet man in the corner was one of the reasons the banners went up at all. And the deepest proof that Kareem was right is not in the Hall of Fame plaque, or the retired jersey, or the belated appreciation of the analytics era. The deepest proof is in a simple question. Take Jamaal Wilkes off those early Showtime teams. Remove his 20 points a game, his defense, his durability, his release valve for every double team Kareem drew. Does that dynasty begin the same way? Do those first championships come the way they did? The men who were actually there, the ones who understood the machine from the inside, all give the same answer. No, it does not work without him. He was load-bearing. He was essential. He was, exactly as Kareem always said, one of the reasons the whole thing stood up. The world eventually came around. It usually does, if you wait long enough. The Hall of Fame called. The jersey went up. The old highlights got dusted off, and a new generation of fans discovered the smooth forward with the impossible shot. and asked the question that should have been obvious all along. How did we forget this guy? The answer is that we did not all forget him. The people who mattered most never did. John Wooden never forgot. Magic Johnson never forgot. And above all, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar never forgot. And never stopped saying so for 4 decades to anyone who would listen. He was right about Jamaal Wilkes. He was right the whole time. It just took the rest of us 30 years to admit it. And maybe that is the truest tribute a player like Silk could ever receive. Not the roar of the crowd in the moment, which he never much wanted anyway, but the slow, undeniable verdict of history finally agreeing with the one great man who saw the truth from the very beginning. If you enjoyed this story, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the legends the history books left behind. Because some of the greatest players who ever lived are the ones nobody talks about anymore, and they deserve to be remembered. Until next time.